The Ramayana is one of two major epics in Hinduism. It was first written in Sanskrit and dates to approximately the 5th to 4th century BC. It depicts the duties of relationships, that of an ideal man, an ideal son, an ideal wife, an ideal brother, etc., and consists of 24,000 verses. It tells the story of Ram, whose wife Sita is abducted by the demon king Ravan and taken to Lanka, a faraway island. My name is Naresh Agarwal. I am an assistant professor at the Graduate School of Library and Information Science at Simmons College, Boston. In this talk today, I am going to try and explore the information-seeking behavior of Ram during his search for his wife Sita. When looking for information on the whereabouts of Sita, Ram asks the trees, the forest, the animals, a dying vulture, etc. Hanuman comes to Ram's aid and eventually helps locate Sita. All of these can be thought of as interpersonal and impersonal sources of information. Let us briefly look at the literature and theoretical basis to this study. Now, what really is this context? In the last couple of years, researchers have primarily understood context as that which surrounds the seeker, or the environment in which the seeker is situated when he goes about looking for information. Some researchers see context as residing in the mind of the seeker, whereby everything becomes context and is not really external to or outside of the seeker. Others see context as socially constructed. In a 2009 ACIST paper, I, along with my PhD advisors, presented the Contextual Identity Framework. Now, what we try to do here is bring together these various views about context in a single framework. The idea is that one can only understand context if we take all these three views of context into consideration all at once. The first of these three views is personal context, or my context. That is, the view of context as seen from the eyes of the seeker. This could include variables such as the seeker's prior domain knowledge, age, gender, etc. The second view is that of the shared context. It is made up of shared norms and social influences. A group of employees working in a team, people of a certain location, ethnicity, people belonging to a certain profession, etc., can all, to varying degrees, see themselves as part of a shared context. The third view, context stereotype, is context as seen from the eyes of one person and the context of other people. This is an objective view of context and made up of the factors and environment that surround the seeker who is looking for information. In a paper presented at the I conference in Seattle in February this year, I presented a workflow of interaction among the three views of context. The environment of a seeker's shared context plays upon the seeker to bring about a problem situation. So here there's a seeker and there's the environment, and this is a problem situation that arises. And here, because of this problem situation, this brings about a need for information. The seeker then approaches a source for information. Now, this source can reside either in the shared context or in the context stereotype, depending on whether the seeker sees this context as part of sees this source as part of his or her shared context or not. While choosing sources when faced with an information-seeking task, now whether a seeker will want to use a particular source or not will depend on the degree to which the seeker is comfortable with the source, will depend on this relationship between the seeker and the source. If a seeker is very comfortable with the source or has a high degree of familiarity with the source, the seeker will see this source as part of his or her shared context. And the source in this case can be any book or any manual or any online source such as a search engine or a friend or a colleague in your workplace or anyone else. Now let's look at Kulthau stages of the information search process. Now in her 1991 framework, Kulthau shows a series of affective stages through which people are taught to move as they are looking for information. She describes 6 stages in the search process: initiation, selection, exploration, formulation, collection, presentation, and assessment. For each stage, she describes the affective, that's the feelings, cognitive, that's the thoughts, and physical, that's actions, dimensions. In the first stage of initiation, for example, the feelings are those of uncertainty, thoughts vague, and the actions are those of seeking or looking for information. In my iConference paper, I also looked at the ways in which sources can be classified. So sources can either be interpersonal or relational, that is human sources such as friends, colleagues, etc., or impersonal sources such as search engines, books, knowledge management repositories, etc. They can be synchronous if you get feedback immediately from the source, for example, conversing with someone over the phone or online chat, or they can be asynchronous, for example, email, where you don't get the feedback from the source immediately. Another way of classifying sources can be physical or electronic. Here, physical can mean face-to-face or printed books, manuals, etc. And electronic can be anything that is online, online sources or printed materials available online or in the PDF files or any other. The discussion above can be used as a theoretical lens to guide the case of Ram looking for information on the whereabouts of Sita in the Ramayana. The study can either be seen as a purely theoretical exercise using discussion on context and source choice as a theoretical lens, or as an interpretive case study using secondary data. The various sources that have helped me in this study are my own impressions of the epic, a Wikipedia article based on the Ramayana, the Ramcharitramanas by Goswami Tulsidas, who was a 16th century saint, a prose based on Valmiki's original Sanskrit Ramayana, as well as an English version of Valmiki's Ramayana. Now, the research question that I ask in the study is, how are the notions of context and source choice in information-seeking behavior applied in the context of an ancient Indian epic? And the story is, or the case is that of the story of the Ramayana. Now, the story of the Ramayana is divided into 7 major chapters or books. The Sanskrit word for chapter here is Kand. Let's look at the unit of analysis. That would be the part of the story where Ram searches for Sita after she is abducted by an evil demon king Ravan. And this is part of the Aranyakand chapter of the Ramayana. So let us now look at the analysis and the findings. Revisiting the workflow of interaction among the different elements of context, Ram here is the searcher or the cognitive actor. Ram's interaction with his shared context, that is his environment, the forest, Sita, Lakshman, clipping of Shurpanakha's nose by Lakshman, the desire for revenge, mention of Sita's beauty to Ravan, the golden deer, Sita's craving for the deer, Lakshman being forced to leave Sita alone. All of these are part of the context which gives rise to the problem situation, that is the abduction of Sita by Ravan. And this problem situation brings about a gap or a need for information in the mind of the seeker Ram. And the need for information here, the information required, is the whereabouts of Sita. The following verses from Valmiki Ramayana, as listed by Rao and Murthy in the 2009 work, show various aspects of Ram's information-seeking behavior. On discovering his wife missing, Ram laments and frantically starts searching for the whereabouts of Sita. One of the seeker variables, that is variables pertaining to the seeker's personal context, is the seeker's prior domain knowledge of the object of search. Now, this verse shows Ram's lack of domain knowledge about his required information, that is the whereabouts of Sita. And the verse also reflects the initiation stage of Koltau's model of the information search process, a phase that is marked by uncertainty and vague thoughts. The affective stages of the actor-seeker in the process of seeking, as per Koltau's framework of information search process, is demonstrated in this verse. Based on the seeker-source relationship, Ram approaches those sources with which he has a high degree of comfort and familiarity. That is, they are part of his shared context. This degree of sharedness or familiarity can be seen in the way in which Ram describes the sources. Here, these include various types of trees, which are impersonal or non-relational sources. The examples here show that Ram is not averse to seeking information from multiple sources. Until this point, all the sources are of the same type, that is, trees or impersonal sources. Ram may not have consulted them because of the high quality of these sources. Rather, he chose to ask them for information primarily because of 2 concerns. First, because of the variable of task importance. The task of finding out about Sita was very important to Ram, as he loved his wife dearly. And second, because of source accessibility. The trees were not the best sources to help answer Ram's query. but he still consulted them as they were easily accessible. This follows from Zipf's principle of least effort. If at all Ram attributed the source with quality, it might be because of their location and having been possible witnesses to the abducting of Sita. As Ram did not get an adequate response from the sources he consulted until now, he switched to another category of sources, this time animals, such as the deer, the elephant, or the tiger. It is not clear if animals should be classified as interpersonal, that is, human or impersonal sources. Perhaps characters which talk, even in the form of animals, birds, or monkey-like humans or humanoids, can be classified as interpersonal sources, while mute living beings, such as trees, may be perceived as impersonal sources, but only so long as they do not verbally communicate with a seeker out here. Now, in this verse, Ram switched to an interpersonal source who was part of his shared context and with whom he had a very high degree of comfort, his brother Lakshman. However, Lakshman was not likely to be a high-quality source, one which would give out relevant search results, because Lakshman was on his way to meet Ram when Sita was abducted, and thus not present on the scene. More evidence of affective dimensions, that is uncertainty and vague thoughts in the initiation stage based on Koltav, is presented, which show the high importance of the task or problem situation to Ram, and it also shows the complexity of the task at hand. Now, until this point, there wasn't any search precision or recall, and the results of or lack of results didn't satisfy the information need of Ram and Lakshman. When suddenly Ram cried out, "O Lakshman, here a garland such as Sita wore around his neck." Upon the ground they found a blood-stained vulture lying dead, and they found arrows nearby like the ones used by the giant host, broken parts of a golden chariot, silk emblems of a canopy smeared with blood, and one half of a mighty sword. Other versions of the Ramayana show conversations with the dying vulture Jatayu, who we can classify as an interpersonal source, as the vulture interacts face-to-face with Ram and Lakshman, and provides information on Sita. Hanuman ends up being the most important source of information. In the later stages of Ram's search process, as per Koltav's information search framework, who provides information on the direction of Sita and ultimately flies to Lanka to trace her. Throughout the epic, there's light shed on other contextual variables as well. As per my survey study in Singapore, the variables that we can see are variables pertaining to the task or problem situation, such as task importance. The task was clearly very important to Ram. Task urgency, task complexity. The task was urgent but couldn't be accomplished easily since it was very complex. Ram lived in a faraway land beyond the vast ocean and was mighty and powerful. We can also look at the variables pertaining to the source quality, access difficulty, communication difficulty. We find evidence of consulting sources largely on accessibility, but as the information need is not met, the focus shifts to sources with a high quality, which have more reliable information on the whereabouts of Sita. Variables pertaining to the seeker-source relationship, such as inherent lack of comfort. We find evidence of the building of the seeker-source relationship between Ram and Sugriv, who does not have direct information but helps Ram in the information-seeking process. There were other control variables, those which pertain to the environment, for example, favorable learning environment. Now, the environment was not favorable in the beginning, but Ram's search progressed after he met Sugriv and after he helps him become king. Looking at the variable of the size of team, it was a 2-person team, Ram and Lakshman, in the beginning, but the team size increased once Sugriv and his army of the Vanars or the monkeys joined in. What I've shown so far is a small example of how episodes in an epic can be used to enhance and validate contemporary understandings of information-seeking behavior and contextual variables affecting choice of information sources. The study should shed light on recorded information-seeking behavior in one of the oldest epics of the world and help towards understanding the historical evolution of information-seeking behavior in context. Further work would involve analyzing other spiritual texts such as the Bhagavad Gita. Other episodes of the Ramayana could also be studied, or the same episode analyzed using a different set of theoretical lenses or a particular model, theory, or framework. A theoretical framework based on the findings of the current study could also be constructed. Feel free to write to me with questions and comments. Thank you.